Hi, my name's Avi, and this is me. And this is me. And this is me. I work at the International Geographic Society. My job is pretty great. I get paid to travel around the world. My most recent trip was 3 months long, and I went to three different countries. First, Jerusalem, Israel, then Kiev, Ukraine, and finally, Santiago, Chile. Israel. The first site I chose to visit is the Western Wall. It is the most sacred religious location for Jewish prayer. The wall is along the western side of Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It is 488 meters long and faces the Jewish quarter. Before it was Temple Mount, Herod's temple stood there, but it was destroyed in the First Jewish-Roman War. The Western Wall is the last remnant of the Holy Temple and therefore very significant and the most religious site in the world for Jewish people. It has also become a tradition over the years to place prayers to God written on notes in the cracks of the wall. The next site I chose to visit is the Dome of the Rock. This historical site is one of the core oldest still existing works of Islamic architecture. The Dome of the Rock is a 20-meter diameter golden dome. On the inside of the dome, there are mosaics, marble, and faience tiles. Inscribed on the dome, there are words from the Quran, the Muslim holy book. The Dome of the Rock has been on multiple different Middle Eastern currencies over the past century. The last site I went to is Mount Masada. Masada is a natural beauty and is also one of Israel's most visited tourist locations. Masada is an ancient stone fortress sitting on top of an isolated rock plateau on the edge of the Judean desert. With beautiful cliffs made of chalk, at the very top you are roughly 400 meters above the Dead Sea. Masada means fortress in Hebrew, because Masada was used as a fortress for the Jewish people in the very first Jewish-Roman War. Ukraine. For my first site visit in Ukraine, I traveled to the town of Svyatoshyr to see the Svyatoshyr Lavra Monastery. The Svyatoshyr Lavra Monastery is one of the three monasteries in Ukraine that has the highest spiritual title, Lavra. This Christian Orthodox Lavra sits on the right bank of the Siversky River, which is in the valley of the Holy Mountains. Svyatoshyr Lavra has been used as a home for refugees since the early 1900s. Before World War I, the Lavra was home to 600 monks, and today there are over 100. The second site I visited in Ukraine was the Lychakiv Cemetery in Lviv, Ukraine. This historical site is one of the oldest graveyards and is older than most of the famous graveyards in Europe. Lying deep in the ground lay the bodies of past wealthy Ukrainian and Polish politicians, artists, and scientists. The cemetery buried many people on the more wealthy upper class side, so older parts of the graveyard look like a sculpture garden. In World War II, over 2,000 of the graveyard's sculptures and monuments were destroyed when the Soviet Union attacked Lviv. For my last site in Ukraine, I went to Priest Grotto. Priest Grotto is a subterranean Holocaust refuge in the longest cave system in the world. During an era of persecution and discrimination against Jews, 38 Jews were able to survive in an 140,000-meter cave system. Several families lived for almost a year hidden. They spent all of their time in darkness, preserving candlelight for cooking. It is remarkable that these Jews were able to survive because 95% of all Jews in Ukraine were killed in the Holocaust. Chile. I decided to start off my trip with seeing the Cruz de Tercer Milenio. This 83-meter tall concrete cross is the tallest monument in South America. The cross was built to commemorate the birth of Christ. Visitors are able to go up to the top and look out the windows in the cross's 40-meter arms. Up in the arms, visitors can view a 360-degree panoramic view of the city. Supporting the cross are three columns in an equilateral triangle. This triangle represents the Holy Trinity. The next place I went to in Chile was the Marble Caves. I had to go by boat to get there. I learned that they have taken over 6,200 years to form. The marble caves formed by huge marble deposits along the edge of the General Lake Carrera being worn away. This started with the marble at the surface of the water breaking up the quickest. This was due to water entering its little cracks. Then it eroded more, and these cracks grew and grew. The result of this was a marble maze. Finally, to round up my trip in Chile, I went to El Tatillo. This natural beauty is the third largest geothermal field in the world and the largest in the southern hemisphere. El Tatillo is also the highest geothermal field in the world, sitting at 4,300 meters above sea level. A geothermal field is a field full of geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is heat that comes from below the surface of the earth. Geothermal energy can be found in volcanoes, hot springs, and geysers. El Tatillo is filled with over 80 geysers and 300 hot springs. While I was in Israel, I noticed a lot of hostility between Palestinians and Israelis. Because of this, I decided to look into the history. Here's what I learned. This conflict started with both of the communities living in Palestine while it was ruled under the Ottoman Empire for hundreds of years with no conflict. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire fell, and Palestine was declared a British mandate. Later in the 19th century, a spike in anti-Semitism occurred in parts of Europe around the Holocaust. This caused many Jews to immigrate to Palestine. They were sick of the persecution and discrimination and wanted to establish their own state. The Arab people, who were already living in Palestine, also wanted their own state. Both of the communities had different ideas of what they wanted to do with the land. In 1948, Israel was named an official state. Although the population was only one-third Jewish, Jews were given 55% of the land, the majority. This left many Palestinians upset and led to the first Israeli-Palestinian War. This war only ended in Israel winning and expanding its borders. Since then, there have been countless protests, rocket launches, airstrikes, and tensions. I also learned of another conflict occurring on one of my visits, the Ukrainian-Russian War. In 1773, Ukraine became a part of the USSR and continued to be until 1991. But Ukraine was separate from the beginning. They had their own language, their own people, and their own status in the USSR. Ukraine, being strong, independent, and a democratic sovereign, threatened many of the past Russian leaders and continued to threaten Vladimir Putin, the current leader. In the past, former leader of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, starved Ukrainians to try and take power. From 1932 to 1933, over 4 million Ukrainians died of starvation. Stalin even removed a letter from the Ukrainian alphabet in an attempt to make it sound more like Russian. In current day, Putin started an attack on Ukraine on February 24, 2022, his ambition clear on dominating Ukraine. This attack has killed over 2,800 Ukrainians, injured more than 3,000, and caused over 3 million refugees. Ukraine has also accepted ammunition, weapons, and medical supplies from NATO, but no active military personnel can be accepted because that would start an entire world war. Some similarities between these two conflicts are that they both started in the past and are still going today, and they both started over land. I loved my experience traveling around the world, and I'm so glad that I got to bring all of you along also. Until next time!